water towery.
Specifically for that.
Pour water.
Hey Heidi,
Hello, Heidi.
Oh,
how was the
this
breakfast
ain't your sky
Saturday?
blue paint.
Was it? Yeah, yeah.
Lots of Grange and countryside people there.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably 20 people.
Oh, nice, good turnout. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did Sean Caston speak or? Yeah.
He spoke and then he did a lot of Q&A.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. One thing he mentioned with in response to a specific question from a LaGrange trustee about like how do we get in on any of the infrastructure funding?
Right.
It's like make sure for right now that Marie Newman's office knows specifically what the projects are and if they're shovel ready, and then presuming he gets elected. But he's like, now is the time that
To get that in? Yeah, we've talked about that before, but I should double check and make sure that we've done that.
he's like, we don't call them earmarks anymore, but they're earmarks.
Yeah.
And each district
Right.
has an amount
Okay.
for projects ranging from 500,000 to 5 million.
Oh, all right.
And it'll just be
Okay, good.
so.
Yeah.
That was
Have
the
you
one
told Ellen already?
No,
or-
no, that was
okay.
like the one kind of real actionable
Right.
thing that I took out of it.
Okay, good.
So it.
That's why it was great having Lipinski, right? He
Yes.
was on the transportation
That was
Yes.
nice.
committee, yeah.
That was
Yeah.
very helpful. I saw him the other day.
Oh, did you?
Not the younger one. Dan.
Oh, the older one.
The older one was
Yeah.
Hello,
downtown.
Bill.
Yeah, with a crew of guys walking down the street.
Oh,
It was interesting. Yeah, I
With
haven't
his
seen him in
posse,
a
huh?
long time, yeah.
yeah. I wonder, hey, hi Al, how are you?
I'm good.
Wonder how his wife's doing, or how he's doing since his wife passed. Yeah.
Moving slow, you know? Yeah. But I haven't seen him in probably 15 plus years.
Okay. Yeah.
He was good for the district.
Into service.
No doubt about that.
Right. He really was. I mean, he was very effective. And you know what? The two of them couldn't be more night and day. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And
That's true. To afford him.
she used to be a bank.
Oh,
And she's like an estate attorney.
yes. She followed me on the whiskey board. We didn't serve together, but she kind of took my place. I'm trying.
Super nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know what I mean?
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
a little more engaging, a little
Right.
more, you know, different
Right.
personality.
Yeah. Right. Oh, now it's bugging me what her name is.
He's cooking.
What's going on in Russia?
Everything's
How's your son
good. He's hanging in there, doing good.
That is
Ostrich.
fantastic.
I've got this new app that says how far ahead he is depending on what cities he's in.
Oh wow, that's perfect.
He called us one day, he called us Saturday afternoon, and he was 16 hours ahead of us. So he was already into that Sunday. So we were just kind of like,
Crazy.
oh my God. He's
That
like,
is
it's 6
adventurous
a.m.
spirit, that's for sure.
Oh yeah. So no, he is enjoying himself, and he's sending back
Good.
videos of they're on a road trip, and he went all the way out to the Sea of Japan, to that city of Vladivostok, and now he's like 500 miles north of there, in another city called. It's the most populated, highest city in the northern hemisphere. It's got like 600,000 people. It's
Oh
in,
my
like,
gosh.
northern Siberia.
And I sure have never heard of it.
No, neither have I. It's a mining town. It's a big mining town.
Very cool.
So it is interesting. He's seen
How are you?
interesting parts of the world.
Yes.
Complaints.
Oh shoot.
What about you?
Elizabeth,
No. I want to say starts with a D. Diane, Denise,
Amber, Bill, it's Laura.
Laura.
I know.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's what I thought.
Yeah.
It might be coming. Yeah.
No
Okay.
D.
Okay. All right.
The caucus executive committee is meeting this Wednesday. So Hello.
Well, I thought it might be you.
How you doing? Good. Well, I went home. I can't, was it our meeting or the one?
Yeah.
Where's my key?
Did you find it? Did you try to find it?
Oh, I looked for like
Right.
3.5
I
minutes.
do reading.
Yep.
Where'd you people know my key?
Where's your bag?
No. I say I went to the board meeting. We're talking about it.
Uh-huh.
Get in and we can check on them. I was like,
Okay.
Technology, so
First, I
in
went
case
by
that
the
comes
mailbox.
up, I just
Sound-
wanted to.
And I seriously don't
Sounds
have
good.
I don't
Oh,
have
to Sean Castenberg.
Oh, then I lost a key.
Then I lost it.
Yeah, I did, and it was.
Where are the mailbox?
It was good.
He's over here.
Great.
Yeah.
Is he there?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you definitely.
Yeah,
You
it
don't
was
have much
great.
mailbox
Yes,
over
it's
there?
there.
It's probably pretty full. It's probably pretty full right now.
How was your weekend?
Elaine is the keeper of the mailbox.
I'm not gonna
Kind of
say
sick.
anything.
If you look,
Oh, no. You were not bad engineer.
I know.
I don't think I did much.
Everybody knew that.
That's the
Had to work most of the weekend.
I know.
So that
It
was.
stinks.
They might still ask for it.
Yeah.
Box with there's anything in it on it, and then I decide whether to pop it or not.
You got a
If
big.
there's nothing in
Well, I
there, I'm
hope
like,
they call
I was
you.
supposed to be going on
That's for a
town
long time.
Thursday for a week.
I know.
So,
For
work.
personal, oh.
Yeah.
Yes, that's why I job
Haircut, you had
was
nice
so.
paper.
I did.
I'm an electronic engineer.
I like it.
Yeah.
Quite a bit shorter, right?
Yeah.
3 inches?
Thanks for noticing, yeah.
You know,
That's just one.
I learned after many years of not noticing in my life, so.
Does not mean.
My mother had that complaint about my father. She got her hair done every Friday, and you'd think he'd learn just to say, "Oh, nice hair."
Maybe second
Never
alarm,
did.
yep, yeah.
that
Never did.
frequency is so much you wouldn't notice.
That's right.
Yes, doesn't matter.
Every Friday, it's like,
You know what?
how would you know?
She was up there. You went to the hairdresser to have your hair washed, and she never washed her own hair.
Yeah.
That was the generation,
Yeah.
you know. And so
Yeah.
once a week, she had her hair washed and styled. And you're right, that was
She stayed
it.
in the whole
Yeah.
park.
Then the hairnet at night or whatever, I don't know.
You were wearing conjures.
I know.
I just know why.
Same thing.
Watching on TV and
Keep this coif looking good.
Now, wait a minute, weren't you growing a beard and now
I
you
did, I
shaved
shaved
and now
it
you're...
off. Oh, this is just laziness. This is not.
He's got the little stubble coming back.
Yeah, but
Yeah, you took it down.
I shaved it all the way off. My wife didn't notice at all
More to say.
She didn't
for like 4 days.
Oh my
Finally had
God.
to say,
You never said, oh. Well, in her defense, you were clean shaven for a long time,
I
right?
know, but still,
don't know some in the
you know.
uniform.
I know.
Given her profession, they'll probably joke about ice, right?
Right, exactly.
There's more to say about it, but it's certainly
Kelly was part of the.
you think it was a factor in their win?
Oh.
It's all unexpected, that's for sure.
That's what everybody's saying.
Second year back.
Okay.
But he really.
Oh, he kind of
How
got
much is
hot on
being
the
built
college,
out?
didn't he?
Billions are being built out. 43 billion or some number like that.
It's very.
Mike Kelly said he'll come up and say a few words. Okay, great. Okay.
We didn't have any flooding last night, did we?
Not that I know of. Although Wolf Road, I was just happened to be on Wolf
Oh, yeah.
Road. It was a mess.
It was
Did
crazy.
you see that?
Oh yeah, I drove through it as fast as I could. Just
Of course you did. Just to see how much of a splash you
Yeah.
got.
Have 1 minute. Yeah. And some. Well, you can do it all over.
Merit badges and all this.
Hi, Diane. How are you? Okay. Well, we have 1 minute. Okay, it's 7 o'clock, so we'll begin. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this meeting of the Village Board of Trustees on September 12th, 2022. To honor our nation's heroes, and especially to honor the men and women in uniform who serve and protect our community, Please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And before we get started with our meeting, I'd like to take just a moment of silence in recognition of September 11th, which, of course, so many years ago was a very tragic day in our collective history. And there was a lot of sorrow associated with that day, but in looking back, there was also afterwards a lot of hope, a lot of pride in the men and women in uniform, especially who went into such a chaotic and dangerous situation when most people were running away. And it gave all of us hope and inspiration and made us realize how lucky we are to be Americans and to have such a high quality of personnel protecting us. So just one moment of silence. Thank you. Deputy Clerk Haskey, can you please call the roll?
Yes, Madam President. Trustee Chen?
Here.
Trustee King?
Here.
Trustee John?
Here.
Trustee Lewis?
Here.
Trustee Rudolph?
Here.
And Trustee Terrell?
Here.
All present.
Thank you. Having read the agenda, does any trustee have an addition or deletion to tonight's agenda? Hearing none, we'll move on first to a recognition and acknowledgement of our new Director of Finance and Village Treasurer, John Mastandona. Manager Bear.
Thank you, President Gallagher. As most of you already know, John Mastandona was appointed as the Director of Finance and Village Treasurer on Monday, August 29th, 2022, following the retirement of Director Grace Turry. John has served the village previously as our Assistant Director of Finance since May 2019, and he really brings a wealth of knowledge to this role. John is a CPA with a bachelor's degree in accounting and economics from Illinois Wesleyan and is currently pursuing his master's in public administration from Northern Illinois University. He's a member of the Government Finance Officers Association, the Illinois City and County Managers Association, the Illinois Government Finance Officers Association, and the Illinois CPA Society. John has more than 10 years of progressively responsible financial experience, and the past 3 years he has worked very closely with former Director Turry to prepare for this role. I'd like to congratulate John on his appointment and let him know that we really look forward to working with him. Thanks, John.
Director Mastandona, on behalf of the entire board, congratulations on your appointment to the position of Director of Finance and Village Treasurer. We are thrilled that you have accepted this role, and as Manager Bear said, you are more than accomplished and more than well-suited to take on the reins, even though Grace Terry had him for 29 years. We hope to see you here for 29 more years, even though I won't be here for 29 years. So thank you, and we wish you continued success in your new role. And now we have the swearing in of a young man whom I've known since middle school, and am thrilled, like his parents, to see him succeed and move up in his role as now lieutenant of the fire department. So please, Chief Kelly.
President Gallagher, members of the board, I'm pleased to introduce Rich Griffith. Rich is a lifelong resident of the Western Springs, a graduate of LT, and in 2012, Rich joined the Western Springs Fire Department as a paid-on-call member. Rich received his licensure as a paramedic after joining the department, and he also worked for our contract paramedic provider, PSI, as well as a firefighter paramedic. Rich achieved one of his goals of becoming a career firefighter paramedic in 2019 when he was hired by the Pleasant View Fire Protection District. And we were fortunate enough to have Rich come back to us in 2020 as a paid-on-call member of our department after he finished his probationary period with Pleasant View. We're very proud of Rich and all his accomplishments. He's one of our go-to members of the fire department, and very proud of his promotion to lieutenant within our department, and I'm happy to have him as part of our leadership team. So Deputy Clerk Haskey, if you could.
Raise your right hand, please, and repeat after me. I,
Richard Griffith,
having been appointed
to the
office of
Lieutenant of Fire and EMS
Lieutenant of Fire and EMS
in the Village of Western Springs,
Village of Western Springs,
in the County of Cook,
in the County of Cook,
do
solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and the municipal code
municipal code
of the Village of Western Springs,
of the Village of Western Springs,
and that I will faithfully discharge
and that I will faithfully discharge
the duties of the office of
the duties of the office of
Lieutenant of Fire and EMS
Lieutenant of Fire and EMS
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability. So Rich, I'm going to put you on the spot now. You have to introduce the people that are here with you tonight, your loved ones, and also like to mention to everyone here that it's a special day not only for Rich's promotion, but it's actually his birthday today too. So, sorry, Rich, didn't mean to embarrass you. Thank you. Knew that was coming. Yes. This is my whole family here with me here. My dad, Gerald, my brother, Stu, Chicago police officer. My sister Betsy, a nurse at Northwestern, and my mom, Diane. And I'm very proud of them. Thank you guys for coming. And my dad is going to stand up and pin the badge for me.
Thank you. Congratulations, Lieutenant Griffith. It's so nice to see you thrive in your chosen profession. I wish you continued success. Okay, you're all welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting. I know that you never take me up on it, but one of these times. Diane, nice to see you. Yeah. Congratulations.
Thank you. Happy birthday.
Yeah. 32, right?
Only for the newsletter, yes.
Okay, Jody, you have a tough act to follow here, but next we have the Hillgrove Avenue Streetscape Concept Presentation. Welcome, Jody.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Good evening,
Good evening.
President Gallagher and members of the board. My name is Jody Mariano. I'm a principal landscape architect with Tesca Associates and here to speak with you this evening about the downtown streetscape plan. So I am going to just see if I can position myself. So we were so thrilled to be invited to help out. We were so thrilled to be invited to work with you all, work with staff on the streetscape plan for downtown. And so this evening, I'm just going to kind of take you through what we've done this late spring and early summer. As you know, the existing streetscape is made up of a multitude of different spaces. We have very formal spaces that are close to the metro station, as you see on the left. We have, great examples of high-quality architecture that reference the tower. We have spaces along Burlington and also along Hillgrove, divide on either sides of the tracks, that also have different types of streetscape materials and products. A lot of honey locust trees, as you can see up in the top right, and those stone planters. And then, other areas that are starting to see a lot of high concentration of outdoor dining use, such as this section along Hillgrove, again with a different type of paving treatment, and we've got some, tables and chairs and outdoor furnishings to support those things. Tesco was really lucky to be involved in some previous planning studies. So on the left, and these are just a few, but the one on the left was the downtown redevelopment plan that Tesco did in 2011. In the middle, in 2018, we worked with Sam Schwartz on a downtown parking study. We understand that you've completed a successful strategic plan. Infrastructure improvements and streetscape investment were always touched on in those things. By infrastructure, we talk about the spaces within the public right-of-way, the roadways, the sidewalks, the parkways, the spaces in between, things that are within the public right-of-way that you control. And by affecting good design practice within those spaces, there is always an opportunity to make downtown welcoming and hospitable and, great for businesses, great for people to linger and spend some time. It's a very quaint downtown, as everybody already knows. So when we got involved here in 2022, a little bit about our process. In June, we worked with staff to invite community members to upload photographs of other streetscapes that they found attractive in other peer communities or things they didn't like to see, but it was just an opportunity to kind of get some ideas out there. People provided photographs, staff also provided some photographs, and then based on the photographs that we heard and discussions with staff, we did some preliminary concept development. We met with staff in July to review some preliminary concepts, review the photos that were uploaded by the community, have some discussion about what could be feasible in downtown Western Springs. And then in August, we held a public open house to review some concepts and to get some more input from the community. This was a poster that was distributed to build interest. And here we are tonight to share the outcomes of those things. So we were stationed on a really beautiful evening at the water tower on August 10th. From 4 to 7 p.m. and we had some exhibits and plans rolled out to just invite people to come by and talk with us about what they'd like to see in downtown. So we took input a variety of different ways, but these 8 points I would say are sort of a summation of what we heard. So I'll just kind of go through. Anytime we talk about beautification, we oftentimes hear that don't go too overboard with beautification. It's really important to be safe first and make sure that the downtown is safe for pedestrians, safe for people to use. We heard a lot of comments about desire to calm traffic and prioritize pedestrian and bicycle uses. We heard lots of comments about the various different types of materials and products that are used in different parts of downtown within the metro platform areas versus the station area versus the downtown areas. There's a lot of different materials and treatments and looking for a way to simplify those things. And we also, I will say, heard that from staff. From staff's perspective, the desire was to make it easier to maintain. When you have fewer types of products, it's easier to maintain them and stock those things. So that was a resounding theme. Tree plantings. The raised stone planters are failing, as you may know, in some locations. We also have kind of many of the same kind of tree, so there was a desire to improve upon the tree plantings in downtown and do it in such a way that makes the sidewalks more open and accessible. Seasonal interest, making sure that we think about treatments that are interesting year-round, including winter holiday, spring, summer, etc. Bicycling. We understand there's a Walk Your Wheels campaign out there and that, we want to make sure that we invite bicycling but do it in a safe way where we provide well-placed bike racks and facilities so that people can come in, park their bikes, and then walk around downtown. And then be efficient. These things can be costly, and we know that resources are limited. So just to make sure that we're getting the best bang for our buck by not spending too much money extravagantly on improvements. And then people were just appreciative to be asked what they'd like to see in downtown, and they just wanted to make sure to stay engaged. This is a concept plan only, so this is really just the beginning of the discussion. When it comes time to go into further engineering, there are still opportunities to make sure we continue to engage the businesses and the residents. So we asked questions a few different ways. This image here shows the questions that we asked about what people would like to see in downtown Western Springs as a whole. So it was a sticker map. People were able to take their stickers and put them where they would like to see things like landscape enhancements, outdoor dining enhancements, more benches and seating, opportunities for public art, opportunities for bike parking, et cetera. So we took some of those improvements in. We also asked folks to weigh in on the types of amenities and treatments they'd like to see. And these were, the image on the left, these were based on the photographs that were provided to us via the community upload. And then we also just had open-ended comments. And some of these images here on the right, we had some budding young urban designers who came by and were drawing all sorts of really exciting things. People really got excited about this. So I think it just goes to show how engaged your community is in public spaces, which is wonderful to see. I feel like I need to get these people jobs in another 10 years. Come work for us. So just a summary, I mean, we don't have to dwell too much on this, but I will say, so these are the outcomes of the image preference survey. It's not to say that we necessarily are bound to select the exact products that are here, but it will help inform staff as you move into the next phases of development as to what products make sense. And I would also just reinforce that it really is key to make sure that Public Works is comfortable with these things. As you know, they need to maintain them. We want to make sure they're durable, they can stock the materials, they're easy to maintain. So when we asked about bike racks, the folks that voted, people really like to see a select number of branded bike racks. So the image on the left shows an example of, in a cluster of bike racks, one of those could have the brand on it, the water tower. We asked people about benches. The one that they selected was the image on the bottom on the right that has a precast concrete base with a reclaimed wood topper. People were very interested in providing recycling, and I think that also needs to tie into the waste stream, of course, in downtown. But there was a lot of interest in being more sustainable and more green in the way that we treat our trash streams. When it comes to understory plantings, folks selected the one that had more native plantings. When it comes to tree plantings, we had heard already that there was interest in keeping trees low to the ground. People generally liked to see things like tree grates. We talked also about providing structural soils, which is a soil mix that goes underneath the sidewalks, that supports the sidewalks, but also promotes tree growth, root growth for trees, so they're healthier. When it comes to lighting, people really liked the overhead string lights like you see on the bottom left. We also talked about decorative paving versus more plain sidewalks. Again, I think these are the types of conversations that would still want to be had with staff. When it comes to outdoor dining, for instance, the outdoor dining that we have throughout downtown, people were very cognizant about having a space that didn't feel like you were so close to traffic, wanting to be protected from the road. So they weighed in at the top left on the perimeter edge treatments they'd like to see, also the types of overhead structures they'd like to see. For instance, people noted they'd really like to see things that incorporated lighting into those pergola structures. Same thing at the bottom with outdoor seating. We showed a whole variety of different types of seating, but people really liked the kind of simple 2 and 4 tops with umbrellas. We talked about specialty features. People were providing images of features such as water features, fire features. And so some of the things that were selected are here. Again, these are real special features that would probably warrant further study, but people like the idea of water, something that provides some sound. It could also be a great opportunity to kind of tell a story about the springs in Western Springs, something that kind of evokes some of that history. As far as the fire feature on the bottom, people were selecting this one is in Homewood, but it's a very low profile with a safe metal cap over it so people aren't getting too close to the fire. That provides some seasonal interest. So then we took all of that information and we wanted to do a test fit. So we did a test fit for this section along Hillgrove Avenue from Wolf to Walnut. And while we're looking and focusing on the spaces and the sidewalks and how to make people feel more safe and comfortable and welcoming on the sidewalk, we couldn't help but also think about some of the feedback we heard regarding calming traffic, making more direct, safe pedestrian routes, and some of the things that we note. Can I point with this? I don't even know. Oh, yeah. Oh, hey, there you go. Okay, so if you look at some of these crosswalks, they're aligned in a way that's sort of diagonal. You know, it's not a straight shot, whereas if it was straight from here to here, it would be a shorter distance. And so those were the types of things we were looking at. Also, you know, you see here on Walnut where there is this bump out that kind of shadows the on-street parking. We could do similar sorts of things on Lawn where we shadow the on-street parking, and that would create a shorter distance for people to cross, more outdoor seating space. As far as the outdoor seating space here in front of Hillgrove Tap, we know that during COVID, an additional 3 or so spaces was occupied for more outdoor dining, and so that was something that we also looked at. So the concept plan that we tested for this area, it's, boy, my eyes aren't so good. One of the things that we notice is that Hillgrove Avenue is, in our opinion, wider than it necessarily needs to be. My cheat sheet. Okay, so we measured, and this is not engineering, this is concept design, but we measured Hillgrove Avenue to be about almost 14 feet wide. That's pretty wide for a street, and especially when we hear a lot of comments about, hey, can we calm traffic? Can we make it more pedestrian friendly? We think that we could reduce Hillgrove Avenue from 1310 to 11 feet and increase the stalls from 19 to 19 and a half. That's a common dimension that we would see in other diagonally parked streets like this. What that would do is that would take our 14-foot sidewalk and bump it up to 16 and a half. So it's just giving us a little bit more space for sidewalk uses. And what that could do also is that, you know, in the future, if any of these other businesses wants to have outdoor seating and dining, it just gives us that much little bit more, even if it was for a two-top, or even if it was for a non-restaurant use, just a office use that wants to put out seating. These are the types of things that provide more activity and more bodies walking around the street. So that's sort of talking about the street itself. And then you remember I was talking about realigning these crosswalks. So these show some realigned crosswalk areas that make this a more direct route, a shorter route, more direct, more visible to cars. Same thing, we've suggested an additional crosswalk here at Lawn where we see people moving. We've slightly aligned the crosswalk here across Walnut. So all of these to just make it clear and a shorter distance for pedestrians to cross. We have suggested a bump out here at Lawn to shadow the on-street parking, and what that does is that gives us a wide bump out at this corner, similar to the wide bump out that's in front of Hillgrove Tap. This wide bump out at the corner here, while it's not a restaurant use today, it still gives us lots of opportunity for more outdoor seating. If in the future there was to be a dining use, it would be able to, you know, accommodate that. But even if not, it's a great opportunity for more outdoor seating. You know, people love to see people in downtown, and so these are places for people to gather. As far as the space in front of Hillgrove Tap, we did propose to occupy an additional 5 spaces for more outdoor dining and to formalize the pergola and the perimeter edge treatment, similar to what we saw in those photographs there. And then based on what we heard about a desire for more amenities, in addition to all these, you know, great streetscape things in the sidewalk and tree grates, by the way, and new trees, we found that this would be an opportunity at this corner to incorporate one of those fire features with low masonry seat walls around the perimeter. And then here at this corner on our way to the Tower Green could be an opportunity for a very modest water feature. So that was sort of a test concept. When we tested this with the community, I think we heard almost all of the businesses there that evening from that block and lots of residents. In all, about 30 people were there, and we heard good support for these types of things. We did do a test budget. We did a budget analysis based on those things. Again, this is not engineering. We're just doing this based on aerial photographs and based on the typical bid pricing that we see for streetscapes in the area. And you can see the breakdown. We break these down based on sort of the layers of construction. First, we prepare the site, excavate things, and we slowly start to build it back up. The high-ticket items, not a surprise, hardscape and paving, those are expensive things. The other high-ticket item, the site furnishings, those include things like the pergola structures, the water feature, the fire features. Those things, increase pricing, of course. We also have included pricing for soft costs, for engineering fees. So if the village was, there's so many ways to implement this, but if the village was interested in implementing this using a state grant such as ITEP, for instance, the Illinois Transportation Enhancement Program, that does require that engineering fees get organized the way that IDOT likes to see them, and so there would be a phase 1 engineering followed by a phase 2 and then a phase 3. Those fees are estimated here. If the village elected not to use a state-funded program like ITEP, phase 1 and 2 could be combined and doesn't have to be broken out that way. There's just so many different ways to implement this. I would mention, too, that there is not a requirement that everything gets built at once. I mean, you could, pick these things up as projects. I mean, being logical about it, of course, you would want to do your curb work and your paving work before the planting work, but things like the fire feature and the water feature, you could stub up utilities to it and install those at a later date. So it's not all of these things in here are dependent on one another to be installed all together. It can be organized in layers. But with that, I think I've gone on for long enough, and I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone may have.
Thank you, Jody.
Yeah.
It was very informative. Does anybody have any questions?
How realistic is it to get a grant to pay for some or all of this? That's something that you'd have some knowledge from other projects?
Yeah, we've been involved in other projects that have been successful with ITEP funding.
What's it, ITEP?
So the one I mentioned is ITEP. That's the Illinois Transportation Enhancement Program. I will say that the ITEP grant funding call for applications is out right now, and it's due on the 30th of this month. So that's coming up very quickly. There are other funding programs out there. Surface Transportation Program is one, STP. Anyways, in our experience with these types of projects, they're more successful when, one, you have a public process attached to it, which we do. They're also more successful when we are able to demonstrate that we're not just beautifying, but we're improving things like pedestrian access, safety things. And when they're also associated with roadway improvements, which this one would be because we're talking about widening sidewalks, reducing roadway width. So those are all good tick marks. It's also very competitive, as you guys might know. So we've been involved in ITEP applications where they might not be successful the first time that we apply, but we get good feedback, and then we've applied a second year and then have been successful. So
what does ITEP pay out on these things?
So there are multiple different ways that generally it's an 80-20. Generally.
And maybe I'll just throw a little bit more into this, because this was going to be on the agenda tonight. It was removed partially because of the direction of your questioning. 80-20 was kind of our assumption, but there are, if you look at that line listing, there are some things that certainly wouldn't fall in the soft goods. Pergolas, and it ended up being that the cost of this was probably higher than we had originally expected out of pocket. The estimated out-of-pocket cost is around $650,000, a little bit more than that, $466,000, likely, right? That's just the estimate.
How much?
466.
Oh, 466.
466, yes. So just after some additional assessment from our planning and zoning meeting, that's what they came up with. So we pulled off the agenda because the thought is that we'll probably include this as a potential capital plan item for next year just because of the sheer cost. But we wanted to bring it up for discussion, to get feedback, thoughts. And Ellen, did I state this somewhat correctly?
That's absolutely correct. And I think the key is that if you want us to apply for the ITEP grant, then the village board has to pass a resolution stating that if we receive it, that we will fund the project and we will match the grant. And Jeff or Matt, you correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff, that you spoke with V3, I believe, about this, and they were already doing some work toward it. And we asked them to pause when we saw the numbers coming up because we'd like to have the board give us some policy direction on whether or not you'd like us to apply for the grant. It doesn't mean we'll get it, but if we do get it, we need to be prepared to then prioritize some of this. And to, as Jody mentioned, to start determining which pieces will advance.
Right, so if we get the grant, we don't have to do all of it, as Jody said and Ellen, correct?
We would refine it, but
Yeah, I could just, if you get the grant, be very specific about what you're asking, what funds for.
And if you get the grant, then yes, you're committed to installing all those things that you're getting the funding for. But just as Trustee John mentioned, there are certain elements in here that are considered ineligible expenses for ITEP, like the pergola structures, the water feature is kind of a gray area. So those things would be 100% funded by the village, whereas the other sidewalk and streetscape and roadway things and some streetscape plantings would be 80-20.
so
Do we have to
that's
include the non-ITEP items?
No, absolutely, and you don't, no, it's completely your choice, completely your choice. Don't have to include those at all.
It would probably make it a more interesting project to show kind of the entire concept plan, but as Jody said, the pieces that you'd be applying for funding for are not necessarily these things that are under site furnishings. Those aren't eligible typically. So it would be more the safety enhancements and roadway enhancements, the sidewalk widening, those types of things.
And do we have a rough estimate of what that amount is?
Which pieces would you say, Jody? Just going through your list there.
So of, boy, I wish I had my other spreadsheet with me, but for the most part, most everything was 100% eligible, with the exception of the pergola, the fire feature, and the water feature. And so I don't have the number. Jeff, I don't know if you have those numbers handy.
Yeah, I have a pretty intense spreadsheet here with all those project costs in here, but Jody hit most of them. Those are the ones that are ineligible. But the costs for the ineligible worked out to the number that Trustee John quoted. But the main ones are the water feature and the pergola.
So if we pulled out the water feature and the pergola
How much?
and the fire feature, how much, consuming that you take that off the top, right? And you're 80%, 20%.
That's about, it's construction alone, that's about 200,000.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, an engineering reduction
Right,
too.
so
but-
that would take that site furnishings number, which is 292. I thought it was about that. Thank you for confirming. But
Yeah.
that site furnishings number is 292. That brings that down to 92,000 roughly. So for just shy of 100,000 for all those site furnishings. ITEP will fund things like benches and
Tree grates.
and all that other site furnishings and things.
Of course, it's kind of hard to do all of this and not have to, what's going to be attractive to the village. We're just building
Yeah.
up parking spaces. I mean, it may not look like we're doing anything.
There's
Well-
that, and also I think if we're thinking long-term about things like fire and water, we probably would want to pull utilities up to those areas, so you're not having to rip it up later.
Which
Yeah,
is
there's a little bit
expensive,
of that.
right? I guess my question would be and did Tesca look at this, how safe it is right now, the way we have it with the concrete barriers as opposed to building out that area? Is it safer to the community to actually implement this in a permanent manner?
Oh, you mean the perimeter treatments here along the edge?
Yeah, to better protect the dining area.
Yeah. So the cost estimate that's in here assumes the low fence treatment and the planting, similar to what that photo showed, a more permanent type of an installation.
But is it significantly safer, I suppose, would be my question, because beautifying is one thing and it's nice, I'm not diminishing it, but safety first, as that showed, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that there's a couple of ways that we can look at safety. One is when we narrow the road, we cause cars to drive slower. When they have so much more space on a travel lane, the likelihood is that cars will go faster. And so when we pinch that down and make cars go a little bit slower, that's one way that we help calm traffic. The other way is yes, to build in that perimeter treatment. So the perimeter treatments, and I think if we went into final engineering, we can always explore this further. But the concept here shows, a proper curb and a deep planting bed, and then a barrier wall or a barrier fence, so that we have that protection. And the thinking is that when you're sitting in the dining area, you want something that's up to like your shoulder height, so that cars can see in, people can see out, but you have something that's separating you, giving you that feeling of enclosure. Whether that material is a composite product or a concrete product, we can always explore that. And I don't think ITEP would hold us necessarily to that specific detailed product, but those are the types of things that I think would come out of final engineering.
I see.
Yeah.
I was going to ask, are we looking to do something like soon and then apply for the grant by September 30, or is this something we're going to consider as part of the rest of infrastructure that we have and perhaps apply next year?
So that's the conversation tonight.
Okay.
Yeah. Whether to pull this out separate from the overall global infrastructure comprehensive plan or keep it as part of that. And
The ITEP grant comes around every other year. So if we don't apply for that one now, we would wait until the next cycle. And that is why we're asking tonight. We would be able to still apply before the end of the month if the board desired.
Okay.
What are the chances of getting it if we apply for it? Is it a nail in a haystack, or is it 50-50?
I wish I could say. I feel like I'd be a millionaire if I could. It's very competitive. So many communities go after this, but we've been part of teams that have been successful and not successful. But I think, the steps that staff has taken in going through this public process certainly helps your case, for sure.
We are behind some other applications because we haven't started phase one engineering or any engineering yet. That's part of the scoring criteria, is if someone has invested in the initial engineering, they're further along the process, so they do tend to score higher. It's a very popular program, but so I mean, I can't really speculate, but those are just kind of where we are with our project.
That's a good point. You're right.
Yeah.
Phase one engineering is.
Yeah.
Some communities have committed funds to phase one engineering, even if they have not begun that process. But if the village, for instance, said, we committed these funds to do phase one engineering, and that could also help.
Yeah, it's kind of a catch-22 though, because if you're just funding this with your own corporate funds, you wouldn't even really do a phase one engineering. You're just doing that to fit it into the IDOT model. So it's kind of how you want to fund it would factor in as well, because you don't necessarily want to commit to doing a phase one and then find out you're going to use TIF funds or some other funds to build the whole thing anyway. So it's kind of it's a choice you have to make, but you have to play by their rules when you apply for their funding, and that requires you to do the traditional phase one and phase two engineering process with IDOT.
Could we use partial TIF funds for this? So
for our match.
For our match?
Yes,
you got
absolutely. That'd be
1,000. That's less dollars that we as a capital planning perspective would have to allocate towards it. And
right.
The question is that a good return? But this is kind of what TIF funds are for, is this type of activity. So
right.
Yeah. I've been involved in other projects where funding has come from multiple sources, and ITEP has no concern about that. So you can certainly choose to fund some things through TIF, for instance.
Can we borrow TIF? Do we have that much TIF available?
That was
Or when will we? Can we borrow against
It just so happens that we had our
Okay.
JRB Review Board meeting this
Okay.
afternoon, and Director Massandona gave a fine presentation on exactly what is in the TIF coffers. So do you have that? Thank you, John.
Yes, the North Tax Increment Financing Fund currently has $150,797 at year end of 2021. And the South Fund has $380,663 at year end of 2021.
And this is after expenses have been paid?
Yes, yes, that was the final fund balance in '21, so that's, the North is doing better than projected currently. We had tax increment of just over $170,000, and really no expenditures coming out of there right now. So it actually had a net change in the fund balance of $170,000.
And that's over how long?
That was just 1 year.
1 year.
That's just the activity of 2021.
And the funds are portable. We can, by ordinance or resolution, transfer money from the south to the north.
I was going to ask, are we stuck with the north?
No, we can use both. But I will remind the board that we do have that obligation to pay back the developer, which amounts to how much per year?
The previous year in 2021, it was about $125,000.
Okay,
And it's 70% of their portion of the increment.
right.
Of
And that's
their
the developer
parcel.
of
Foxford.
Foxford, right?
But each year, presumably, the increment is going to increase, and that's been the history thus far, so.
And we could always, if we did move funds over, it could be just a loan that the North would pay back the South or vice versa, or it could just be transferring
I like
funds.
that idea. I feel like it's,
I guess I'd be wondering, if we did do that, is there something else that would be more desirable that we're shutting the door on? But
For the TIF
for the TIF
funds,
money, because
yeah.
it would tie it up for at least a year, but I guess somebody pointed out this is exactly what we should be
I was
using
gonna
it
say,
for.
this does seem like the kind of thing you would want to use
Yeah,
it for.
it enhances the downtown, you know.
Is there something that's more appropriate for the TIF money this year?
Well, we had talked in the past, and I think
Maybe
Manager
we should
Bear.
have done our presentations
Maybe
the
so.
opposite direction.
Right. But one thing was incentives for business owners to improve their facades.
Right.
And that would be, we would be able to establish a fund with TIF funds. But, you know, the TIF funds come in every year too, so.
yeah, this is every other year, right? So it's
Right.
and it's you said an 85% chance we're going to win this? No.
I wish I could say that.
But I mean, it's, you swing twice, you get this year and 2 years from now, you get a better chance than just swinging once.
Right.
So when you're talking 466, is that the whole project, or is that?
Yes.
That's our part. So
Our-
we're,
that's- no,
That's
paying-
our part of
we're
it.
doing 90.
No, that's
We're doing the
our part,
466,
yeah.
all right. It's a different
Sorry.
number.
Yeah.
Yeah, of the whole thing.
I thought you
466
meant whether with the pergolas and
Oh,
the
yeah, no.
features or, yeah.
With everything, so it's 466, but
Is our 20%.
but we're saying we could use TIF funds as part of that 466, right?
Right.
Okay,
Correct.
making sure.
Our local
And it's not
match.
20%, it's 20% plus the stuff that they're not covering.
Yes,
Right.
yeah, right.
What's the current state of the trees that are along there? And is there anything that's going to happen to the trees if we don't do something?
Yeah. Matt, do you want to address that? The Public Works Division of Matt's department has been doing some work over there.
So on this section of Hillgrove specifically, it was in such bad condition over the past several years. We kind of tried to implement kind of an intermediate step with just some landscaping. So all of the planter boxes that were on that location had trees that died, or the planter boxes had literally ruptured from the root balls. So we removed all of those in this section, and we did some landscaping work. Not a huge substantial cost, but we did some work basically to pretty it up for this year, to kind of keep it going as we kind of make a final decision on what the roadmap is going to be. The trees and landscaping, most likely, based on what I've been on walkthroughs with Jody through this process, could be adopted if that's the same planting design aesthetic that we do end up going with. But we haven't put a huge substantial cost. It's been basically all soft landscaping we've done to date. So if there are substantial hardscape improvements or anything like that, it wouldn't be a huge change of what any of the work we've invested so far.
That whole strip really right now is all pretty unintentional, right? Because, I mean, we added outdoor seating kind of as an afterthought to the restaurants there. And then from what you just described about what we did have for planters and now we have, I appreciate, and it totally makes sense to me, that you would have just dealt with it as you could. I know how those were falling apart.
Right.
But so now we really do have this really kind of major central part of the village that's just kind of unintentional in terms of how we're utilizing it. So I think we're all reacting to the cost because we know how many projects and priorities we have. But I do also see the value of doing something like this in this part of town. I do think it makes it safer, Alice. I think that intersection, and when you're kind of even standing there to wait for Hillgrove, I mean, it's a lot happens right there at that intersection. So I can see the value of this, of narrowing the street a bit and having more substantial, intentional seating. Seems safer to me.
I would look favorably on this project if I was assured reasonably that it's not irresponsible for us to borrow or take those TIF funds to do this, especially if it's only one year we accumulated all this, the TIF funds.
I agree.
I mean, it's not,
To that point, I was just going to ask if you say transferring from the south to use on the north, do we have plans for beautification or on the south side of the tracks? Because it's equally as used of a sidewalk and storefront area in front of Kirschbaum's and the hardware store. I know there's no restaurants on that. Salerno's. Sorry, so I guess I was asking, is that in the pipeline for future years? And then would we have more TIF money on the south side, or we would take from the north to on the south?
So a couple things there.
Okay.
The Burlington Avenue side has the same situation with those raised planter beds, and Matt took a look at that and we had intended either this fall or now it looks like it's going to have to wait till spring to do exactly what we did here. We're taking out those boxes. We're going to put everything more at grade. We plan to do the interim improvements. We actually asked a landscaper to give us a proposal for that to see if we could get those removed sooner rather than later. They're deteriorating just like these were. That was the interim level improvement. But we would apply, and Jody talked a lot about this to our businesses that attended the open house who were from the Burlington Avenue side, about applying the same vocabulary that we're looking at for this side would apply very naturally to that side. There are several restaurants like Hashtags and Salerno's and some of the other spaces over there. Oberweis has a very large gathering all the time. All of those places need that same sort of intentional gathering space. So, and outdoor, I think, is here to stay post 2020. I think we would all agree that even in some of the colder months, people are looking for outside seating and places to gather outdoors. So, yes, to answer your question. And then to answer your last question about whether the money would need to be shifted, we just had a nice joint review board meeting today, as President Gallagher alluded to, and I think we've looked at that to say it's really up to the board whether you would want to borrow money or whether you would want to just allocate them. The TIFs are defined in such a way that they meet each other, and that allows you that opportunity to share resources across from one to the other. And obviously, each block is a little bit different, so every project is going to have a little different price tag associated with it. But in general, we would expect that everything that Jody walked through could be applied on the other side, on the Burlington side as well.
Okay, great. That sounds good. I mean, I think these safety concerns and making the sidewalks and the crosswalks, safer and shorter and everything like that is very, and I was thinking, there's a lot of little kids that dine here, and right now they could just run into the street. So having at least, I was thinking a barricade there would make it safer in that respect, so.
Right.
Okay, great, that was my question.
Jody, do you know whether the ITEP looks unfavorably at us if we do this on the north side and then 2 years from now say, hey, we want to do this on the south side? The same format? Do they say, hey, you got your chance? Or
No, as far as I understand, Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, but as far as I understand, a community is not precluded from reapplying for another project.
we don't go down on a pecking order because
No.
we took their funds?
Not at all, no.
So I think the question is whether or not we, I guess, would want to include this on the omnibus with the understanding that if we did it and we have to allocate the 466,000, can't put it out there and then take it back, right? That's, so.
And we don't have to commit to how we come up with the 466.
I think we probably have to say, well, do they care? Or no, we just have to
No,
say.
it's a local matter, as long as we commit
However,
to
we
funding it.
utilize our funding
Right.
for our various forms. Okay. Sorry to.
No, that's fine. So, because of kind of all this changes today, we didn't have this on we had this presentation, but we didn't have it under plan and zoning. We were going to, but based upon the discussion, I feel like maybe we should have because I think in the next meeting, we have to agree that we either agree to set aside those funds or not and apply for the ITEP, correct?
Right. I think we have to give direction to staff tonight because V3 would have to
Get moving.
get moving. So, although we can wait to,
The meeting of the 26th is when you would do the resolution approval.
okay.
Would we be able to get all this done by the 30th, this application to ITEP?
Yeah, because we're working on another application for the sidewalk project. We already have V3 engaged, and we've been talking with them about this potential application as well. So it'll just be us giving we put the red light up for a few days here. We could just get them moving again tomorrow, and shouldn't have any issue making the deadline.
I think it's a good use of our TIF money, especially with all the safety concerns that are being brought out.
Can we take a consensus?
I would just see if there's an agreement of the board to direct staff to move forward with preparing an ITEP application and having it brought back at the next meeting.
Okay.
Just an informal kind of polling.
Everybody's nodding, I'll take that as yes. Okay, we'll go ahead and get.
Any
moving.
objections? That's the easiest way. If nobody's objecting, then.
Okay.
I think it's good, like, kind of a long-term, plan for the village. I think, as you said, the outdoor dining and just the interest in being outside, I don't think is going away. I think it's a big benefit to the overall feel of the community. And I think, in addition to the safety, I think things that enhance that and make it attractive for other people to come here too, right? It's attractive for people outside of Western Springs to come to this already cute.
All right. Yeah. Good points. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Jody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Trustee John. Thank you, Jeff. Okay.
Well, you're raised plantings.
We'll move on now to the next section of our agenda, which is citizen comments. There being no one here to comment, we'll move on to consideration of agenda items during the workshop portion of our combined meeting. First, as always, Trustee Chan, Properties and Rec. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Madam President. The Properties and Recreation Committee met last Tuesday, and we discussed the following as listed on tonight's agenda. Item number A, and I'm going to read this ordinance, and I want to make sure I properly represent it. An ordinance approving and authorizing the execution of Amendment Number 1 to the Standard Water Tower Lease Agreement entered into with Chicago SMSA Limited Partnership, DBA Verizon Wireless, relative to the installation and operation of certain telecommunications facilities located at 4400 Central Avenue, Spring Rock Park site, and amendment number 3 to the standard water tower lease agreement entered into with Chicago SMSA Limited Partnership DBA Verizon Wireless relative to the installation and operation of certain telecommunications facilities located at 300 48th Street Garden Market site. Okay, just so we know what we're talking about here, we discussed these amendments in committee, and as you can see, these amendments are considered tonight with Verizon Wireless. As previously, the term of these amendments is 5 years, 60 months, and rent collected per year of $24,000 at each site, and shall increase 10% at the beginning of each extended term. Yes, as I said, this rent will apply for both the Garden Market Water Tower site and the Spring Rock Park Water Tower site. We learned in our committee discussion that there's currently 3 providers that rent space on the water towers. It's Verizon, AT&T, and T-Mobile. We learned in the past there was more providers, but like Cricket, US Cellular, but there's been a lot of consolidation in the sector. So this is the ordinance that we're looking at tonight, and we recommend approval of the ordinance. So I don't know if there's any questions on that.
This is again an extension of
Yes.
existing facilities.
Yes, that's
Right.
what we were.
We've had
Yes.
these are the ones we've had up there.
30
Yes.
years
Right.
plus.
Yes.
30 years.
For
Okay.
some of them, yes.
Okay, that makes sense.
We didn't get that, but that's a long time.
Yeah.
Right.
Early, yeah, the end of the,
The very first one, which I don't know which provider off the top of my head it is from 1997. So I don't know if it's Verizon, it might actually be
25
AT&T, which was our very first one, but most of these, almost all these agreements date back to the early 2000s at least.
Great, okay. So that is that. And very quickly, I'll review the capital projects that we're following in Properties and Rec. The West Pedestrian Underpass. I don't know if you guys have walked around the area, but the concrete looked poured underneath the underpass. So I don't know if you want to give another quick update.
Concrete work is poured. The contractor left the site. We're actually waiting on coordination for some additional subcontractors, mainly the electrician to run the electricity and the lighting. So they should actually be coming back here probably in the next week or 2 to run the electrical work. And then we're actually beginning to hit the home stretches here in terms of the rest of the underpass. Once that's all done, they'll do the kind of work outside the main corridor of the underpass out in the village right-of-way areas for finalizing those improvements.
Great.
Does that also include then the demo and the shutting down of the current over the tracks grade crossing?
Yes,
'Cause
so-
there's a job site sign there now.
Right, so our contract with deconstruction has the removal of the approaches in village right-of-way on both the Hillgrove and Burlington side. The BNSF themselves will have to do the removal of the concrete and asphalt inserts, I guess I'll call them, that lie in between the rails. So they'll come and do those at a separate time, but the approaches up to those areas will be done as part of our contract. Yes, it'll be sometime this fall. That will actually be one of the last things that gets done, so probably later in October.
Underpass will be open first, and then we'll block
Correct.
over the pass.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay, item number 2, Wolf Road Bike Path, ribbon cutting scheduled for Monday, September 26th at 6 p.m. Be there with your bike and celebrate this great addition to biking options here in Western Springs. I know for me, every time I'm at that intersection, there is a biker at the light. So I just want to say great work to everybody. I know it was a long time coming, so great work. Item number 3, East Train Platform. There'll be more on this shortly in the other portion of this report. And there's 2 new projects that have been added to our portfolio in Properties and Rec that are related to the historic water tower. The interior stairs and tuck pointing projects for the historic water tower. Okay, so then the last item is other, and I'm going to turn it over to Director Super to discuss this item related to the East Train Platform.
Yes, thank you. So in front of the dais this evening, there's a memo that I put together related to the final payout items for the East Underpass. We just had some information kind of get finalized over the past several weeks. We've been reporting at the Properties Rec Commission committee meetings that over the past several months, we've been essentially waiting for IDOT to approve the balance of the engineering and construction costs that were as a result of additional underground and utility work related to the project. We did get those BLR forms, which are IDOT's forms, approved and sent to us back in July, and then we had concurrent signatures sent back to them at that same time. So we essentially are at the point now where we have the finalized numbers in place, and we can prepare to kind of sign and pay out the cost related to the James J. Bennis Associates engineering numbers. I have outlined then in a memo that kind of explains what the different engineering costs are, because there's a lot going on here. So I'll kind of quickly run through the memo, and then if there's questions, we can talk about that. And then I do have one additional item that I got a call back from IDOT this afternoon regarding construction that I'll update on that as well. So, so in the packet, or in front of you, is a memo that kind of outlines what the engineering costs were that were approved through the various stages of the project and what the final costs ended up being. The village board at the beginning of this project approved essentially 2 agreements with IDOT. You have the local public agency agreements, and then there was the engineering agreement, the Phase 3 engineering agreement. The local public agency agreements back in 2016 authorized up to $321,000 for Phase 3 engineering for this project. That was basically the amount of engineering available based on the federal money we had and what our local match would be expected to be. So that initial local match was $64,383. Bennis's proposal that came to the village separately about a year later, once we actually got bids and all the design completed, identified the engineering as $241,863. So as part of the process, there were numerous unforeseen and unexpected utility conflicts in the BNSF right-of-way for the platform project. Mainly, there were unidentified utilities that the BNSF owned themselves, as well as level 3, which runs a fiber conduit through the BN right-of-way that came in conflict with where our platform was. So there were a number of project delays and then redesigns that had to occur as a result of that. Brad Hargett actually, from Bennis, in his memo, actually did a nice job kind of summarizing some of the dates and those impacts on page 2 of the memo that he had regarding some of those utility conflicts. So if you look at the second page of my memo, I've broken down from the approved BLR forms from IDOT, to condense those, because those are several pages in and of themselves.